3 true disturbing home alone horror stories. Being home alone is supposed to be a moment of solitude, a chance to unwind in the comfort of your own space. But what happens when that comfort turns into unease? What happens when the silence becomes deafening, and every little sound feels out of place? Have you ever had the feeling that someone, or something, was nearby, just beyond your sight? The uneasy sensation of being watched, the hair rising on the back of your neck, your instincts warning you that something isn't right. 3 individuals, 3 seemingly ordinary nights. But within the walls of their own homes, they encountered something they could not explain. An unseen presence. A shadow in the doorway. A noise that could not be ignored. Their experiences are real. Their fear was tangible. And tonight, you will hear their stories. Stories that will make you rethink every creak, every whisper of wind, every fleeting shadow in your own home. Lock your doors, check your windows, and listen closely. Welcome to Victor Nightshade Channel, where the darkest tales come to life. If you love spine-chilling horror stories, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon, because you won't want to miss what's coming next. Now let's begin. Story 1. The Attic Knock. It started as a quiet night. My parents had left town for the weekend, and I had the house to myself. No distractions, no interruptions, just me and the silence. For the first few hours, everything was normal. I made dinner, watched a few episodes of my favorite show, and settled in for the night. But as the clock crept past midnight, I heard it. A faint thud. Somewhere above me. At first, I ignored it. Houses settle. Pipes make noise. It's easy to explain away. But then it happened again. Louder this time. I muted the TV and listened. Silence. My mind raced through possibilities. The attic was rarely used. Just old furniture, seasonal decorations, things my family never touched. Another noise. A slow, dragging sound. Like something shifting in the attic. This wasn't just the house settling. This was movement. I grabbed my phone, its dim glow my only source of light, and walked towards the attic ladder. The pull-down hatch was closed, as it should be. But as I reached for the string, I hesitated. My breath was shallow. My pulse quickened. Part of me wanted to walk away, to pretend I hadn't heard anything. But then, another thud. Closer this time. I yanked the string and the attic ladder creaked open. A wave of stale air drifted down, thick with dust and something I couldn't quite place. I climbed one step at a time, the wooden panels groaning beneath my weight. My phone's flashlight flickered across the cluttered space. Old boxes. A broken chair. Shadows stretching long across the walls. And then I saw it. A small wooden hatch, slightly open. A space between the walls. A space that shouldn't have been open. I stepped closer. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. The air felt heavier, thick with an unshakable sense of dread. I reached out just a few inches more. And then, knock. A single, deliberate knock from the other side of the hatch. I stumbled back, nearly falling down the attic steps. My phone slipped from my grip, the flashlight casting jagged beams across the attic before landing face down, plunging me into darkness. For a moment, all I could hear was my own breath. Ragged. Uneven. Then, another sound. Not a knock this time, but a soft scraping. Something shifting. Something moving just beyond that wooden hatch. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers trembling as I turned the flashlight back on. The hatch was still slightly open. But something had changed. The dust surrounding the opening had been disturbed. Fingerprints. Long, slender imprints that dragged outward, as if someone had been reaching for me. I backed down the ladder, slammed the attic door shut, and locked it. My hands were shaking. My mind was racing. What had I just heard? What had I almost seen? I didn't sleep that night. Every small sound sent my heart into my throat. And when morning came, I gathered the courage to check the attic one last time. The hatch was closed. The dust was undisturbed, as if nothing had ever been there. But I know what I heard. And I know that something or someone was up there that night. What would you have done in this situation? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story gave you chills, hit that like button. It really helps the channel. If you think this story was terrifying, wait until you hear the next one. Subscribe if you dare. And remember, sometimes the scariest things aren't in your nightmares. They're right behind you. Story 2. The Unseen Guest. Jack had lived alone for years, in a quiet suburban neighborhood where nothing ever happened. It was the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked, where the biggest concern was overgrown lawns or noisy neighbors. But one night, he began to notice strange things. It started small, harmless, even. His kitchen cabinets, slightly open every morning. A chair in the living room, slightly moved. The TV on, though he distinctly remembered turning it off. He told himself he was just forgetting things, that these were all coincidences. But then, there was the cat. Jack's cat, a lazy tabby named Oliver, had always been affectionate, always by his side. But lately, Oliver refused to enter Jack's bedroom. He would sit at the threshold, ears back, tail puffed, staring into the room as if something unseen was waiting inside. It was unsettling. And then, it got worse. One evening, Jack decided to test his growing paranoia. He set up his phone to record the living room overnight. Just to prove to himself that he was imagining things. Just to put his mind at ease. The next morning, he checked the footage. At first, nothing. Just the quiet hum of his apartment. Hours passed in silence, the footage uneventful. But then, at exactly 3:14 a.m., his closet door slowly slid open, inch by inch. A movement so slow, so deliberate, it could not have been the wind. Jack felt his chest tighten. He watched, frozen, as the door opened just wide enough to reveal darkness. Deep, endless black. And then, from that darkness, two glowing eyes stared directly at the camera. Jack dropped his phone. His breath caught in his throat. He forced himself to watch the rest of the footage. The eyes remained there, unblinking, unmoving, for exactly 43 seconds. Then, just as slowly, the door slid shut. Jack barely slept that night. He tried to convince himself that it was a trick of the light, that his tired mind was playing games with him. But then, the following night, something else happened. He woke up suddenly. Not to a noise, not to a nightmare, but to something else. A feeling. A presence. The kind of feeling that makes your skin crawl, that turns the air heavy and thick. He didn't move. Didn't breathe. And then, from the foot of his bed, the closet door creaked open. This time he saw them. The eyes. Peering from within. And then, movement. Slow. Unnatural. The figure, no more than a shifting shadow, crept forward, pulling itself out of the closet inch by inch. Jack squeezed his eyes shut, refusing to believe what he was seeing. He waited. And waited. Until the silence stretched so long it became unbearable. When he finally opened his eyes, the closet was shut. Jack left his apartment that morning. Packed a bag. Found a new place within a week. He never went back. And the strangest part. The new tenant, months later, reached out to him. Not to ask about the rent or the neighbors, but to ask one thing. Had Jack ever noticed anything unusual about the closet? What would you have done in Jack's situation? Let me know in the comments below. VO. And if this story gave you chills, hit that like button. It really helps the channel. If you think this story was terrifying, wait until you hear the next one. Subscribe if you dare. And remember, sometimes the scariest things aren't in your nightmares. They're right behind you. Story 3. The Man in the Vents. Melissa had just moved into a new apartment. It was nothing fancy, just a small one-bedroom unit in an older building. The rent was suspiciously cheap, but she didn't ask questions. A fresh start in a new city, a place to call her own. It was exactly what she wanted. At least, at first. For the first few nights, everything was fine. The usual creaks and groans of an old building settling into the night. Nothing unusual. But then, she started to hear it. Faint noises coming from the air vents. At first, she dismissed it. Just the air system, maybe rodents in the walls. But something about it felt off. It wasn't just scurrying. It was breathing. Slow. Shallow. Almost as if someone was trying not to be heard. Melissa convinced herself she was imagining things. But as the days went on, she started to notice other odd occurrences. Items slightly moved from where she left them. The sensation of being watched, even when she was alone. And the worst part? Every night, the breathing seemed to get closer. One night, unable to sleep, she grabbed her phone, turned on the flashlight, and aimed it through the vent near her bed. At first, she saw nothing but darkness. Then, a glint of something metallic. Her heart pounded. What was that? She hesitated, but curiosity got the best of her. Carefully, she unscrewed the vent cover and peered inside. The flashlight beam cut through the shadows, revealing eyes. Human eyes. Wide, staring directly at her. Melissa screamed and stumbled back, her mind struggling to process what she had just seen. The eyes didn't blink. They didn't move. And then, the sound started. A low, rasping breath. A slow, deliberate scrape of something shifting inside the vent. She bolted from the room, slamming the door behind her. Hands shaking, she dialed 911. The operator stayed on the line, her voice calm but urgent, as Melissa locked herself in the bathroom, heart racing. When the police arrived, they searched every inch of the apartment. And what they found was worse than Melissa could have ever imagined. A hidden crawlspace behind the walls, accessible through the vents. In that cramped, suffocating space, they found a makeshift sleeping area. Blankets. A water bottle. Empty food wrappers. And worst of all, a small collection of personal items. Items that belonged to Melissa. Things that had gone missing over the past few weeks. Hair ties, a toothbrush, a photograph of her with her family. And then, they found him. A man. Wedged deep in the crawlspace, curled into the darkness, watching them through the narrow slats of the vent. He had been living there. 4 weeks. Maybe longer. Melissa moved out that night. She never returned. But sometimes, she wonders, how long had he been watching her before she noticed? How many nights had she slept peacefully, unaware that just inches away, someone was listening? If this story unsettled you, let me know in the comments. What would you have done in Melissa's situation? And if you love terrifying true stories, don't forget to hit that like button. It helps the channel and ensures you won't miss the next nightmare-inducing tale. If you think these stories were disturbing, just wait until you hear what's coming next. Click here for another terrifying true horror story. Subscribe if you dare. And remember, sometimes the scariest things aren't in your nightmares. They're already inside your home. What would you have done in these situations? Let me know in the comments below. And if these stories gave you chills, hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Subscribe if you dare. And remember, sometimes the scariest things aren't in your nightmares. They're right behind you.